Okay, so here we are continuing on for notes for 8-3 on box and whisker plots. So we went over the 5-number summary, and first off, we're going to take a look at this example number 1, which focuses on Mrs. Sanchez's period 1 math quiz results. So let me just move this box of meat out of the way. Looking at this graph to start with, I'm going to zoom in on this. I like to first, it annoys me that these aren't whiskers, so I'm going to draw those whiskers in. Always, first thing I start with are labeling my 5-number summaries on here because it makes a lot more sense. This guy here, my minimum, maximum at the other end. That line in the quote-unquote middle of my box is my Q2, aka my median. Q1 is the first line of my box, and Q3 is the second edge. So helpful to start with that. Really helpful. Okay, so part A here, what was the highest and the lowest scores? Okay, so when you're looking at this, really, really helpful to draw, get a ruler or a straight edge, a book, your cell phone, something, so you can draw a line down and see exactly where those whiskers are hitting. So that minimum, I'm definitely agreeing that minimum is hitting 20. But the maximum, if you were thinking the maximum was 90, you would be off by a smidge. That is not lined up exactly on the 90 there. I would assume that would be maybe about 92. You could have a little room for leeway. I'd accept probably 93 or 91, but nothing more or less than that. So writing that down, highest score, 92 was the highest, and 20 was the lowest. Notice how I labeled those answers, which one was the highest, which one was the lowest, instead of just assuming. Part B, what was the median score? So that median score, right in the middle there, and I say quote unquote middle because you can see that it's not actually in the middle of my box this time. And we're going to talk about what that means. So that median is somewhere in between 60 and 65. I'd say probably close to 63 would be a good estimate. So we'll go 63 was my median score. Median being AKA Q2, right? You've got to know that Q2 and median are the same thing in order to function here. Okay. Part C, can we determine how many students took the quiz? So looking at our graph here, do we know how many students are in this period 1 math class? And the matter of the fact is, and this is one of the downfalls to using a box plot, is that we cannot tell. We cannot determine how many data values or how many students are in this class. We just don't have enough information. So no, box plots don't show the number of data values. That's what's going on there. They don't show, so we won't be able to figure that out, which means we can't find the average, the mean, because we don't know how many numbers we would need to be dividing by. Okay, so taking a pause and coming back to talk about some of the percentages. What makes this example 1 graph different than the first one that we started with? And you might be noticing that it's not symmetrical is the word that you're looking for. They're not all equal in quote unquote length. And it's really important that you understand this. Even though each of these chunks are not all equal in quote unquote size, they are equal in their percentages. So from Q1 here to Q2, this is still 25% of the data. That still has the same number of data values that Q2 to Q3 has. And you rightfully so might be thinking, what the heck, that's really crazy because that blue box is very clearly bigger than the yellow box. And that's not what those boxes are showing you. Those boxes aren't showing you how many data values are in there, but they're showing you how spread out that data is. So let's say, because remember, we don't know how many data values there are, but let's say there's 20 data values total. 20 divided by 4 for 4 equal parts gives me 5. So there's 5 numbers, and again, I'm making this up. There's 5 numbers in each section. So that means in the blue box, there's 5 numbers. There's also 5 numbers within that yellow highlighted box as well. The only difference here is that those 5 numbers in the blue box are more spread out, maybe 30, 40, 50, 55, and 60. Whereas 5 numbers in the yellow box, they're really close together, maybe 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, all really close. So I just want to reiterate that the fact that the blue box is bigger just tells you that the numbers are more spread out or there's a greater variation. So I'm just going to say bigger box, that sounds weird. Let's go larger. The larger box means that the data values are more spread out, aka greater variation. If I add the blue box and the yellow box, that still gives me 50% of the data, even though they're different size boxes. From the minimum to Q1, that's still 25% of the data. Just like from Q3 to the maximum is still 25% of the data. They're just more spread out versus less spread out. So then, when they ask you what percent of students got greater than or equal to a 70, greater than or equal to a 70, 70 starts right here, greater than would be this way. So that would be 25%. Ooh. All right, last but not least, what is the interquartile range? If you don't remember that, you'd have to flip back to remember that it's Q3 minus Q1. Q3 was 70, Q1 was 30. So that means my interquartile range is 40.